That way folks can are able to view these sessions at a later point in time. Let me get things ready. Okay, so good morning. My name is Sean Palmer. Again, I'm with ACT Aspire, and I'm the program manager here working specifically with Wyoming. Today we're going to be reviewing a training session in regards to technology readiness. There was a training session earlier, back in October, that was performed at the beginning of the spring window here. And when we were talking with the WDE, we wanted to repeat that training session as we're getting closer for maybe the technology dates to make sure that everyone's ready for the spring admin. So today we'll give a quick update here. Today we're going to hopefully switch over the next page. Yeah. So today we're going to be reviewing in our agenda. We're going to go through specifically around technology readiness. So this is going to be aimed towards getting your system set up for technology for taking the test online. It'll be primarily targeted for your test coordinators and technology coordinators to make sure they are going through the proper steps for bringing the ACT Aspire online and answering any questions that you may have in preparation for doing so. So the plan is here, we're going to review the schedule of events. We're going to review the ACT Aspire components and system requirements, as well as the various supported devices, and then the resources that are available for the districts and schools. So this next slide here, we are going to review the schedule of events. And what I've tried to do here, and we can share this on our ACT Aspire homepage, is really a schedule of events. It's a one-page computer-based testing schedule specific to the folks here in Wyoming. On the left-hand side, you'll see the 12 steps that you can walk through. On the right-hand side, you'll see the various dates that you're responsible in order to make sure that you're ready and on par. And it also gives you a good idea of what's coming up next. I would also like to highlight on the right-hand side, we do have many self-paced trainings in our training management system. And the link is at the top of the screen, so that's actaspire.tms.pearson.com. And it's also on our ACT Aspire landing page. So as you'll see as we go through these various steps, there are various training videos that you can go through to get more information about those. So as I mentioned before, step one was to walk through the implementation training. So this was a training that was done at the beginning of October. This is really an overview which covers the technology requirements as well as the portal administration, and that was conducted back in October 2nd to the 8th of 2015. The second step here is to invite users into the portal. So when we set the organizations up for the various districts and schools, each district had an administrator assigned to them. And those administrators, their responsibility is to go into the system now and invite new personnel into the system. So for each of their schools, they need to set up a test coordinator as well as a technology coordinator, and also room supervisors, or as others are known as the proctors, that are actually going to be giving the exam. So typically that's done between November 24th of 2015 up until the testing window. So if you haven't done so and you are that district's administrator, please go into the system and start inviting the proper users that are needed. Step 3 here, hold on one quick second. Step 3 here, we have the student data. So the Wyoming Department of Ed has sent us a list of students that are going to be participating in the spring window here. What your responsibility is to do now is to go in and view those students and verify that you have the proper students in their respective grades and schools. If their data isn't correct, or they need additional accessibility accommodations or their personal needs profile, that's really the time to go through and make sure. Or if you've had any other students that have just come into the district or schools, now is the time to upload that student information that will be well prepped going into the spring admin. And that window to be able to do that student data information is from January 1st through March 3rd. Step 4 is an optional but recommended if there's accessibility and accommodations needed for particular students, or sometimes it's referred to the PNP, which is the personal needs profile. Then you would go through and make sure that any special accommodations are assigned for those students individually. And you can do that student by student within the student details section, or you can go through and mass upload that data through a personal needs profile extract and then re-import that into the system. So that's conducted between February 19th through March 4th. So that's coming up here towards the end of the month. Second option for step 5 that we really recommend, again, it's optional, but we recommend, and many folks are using this, is to create groups. And where it's used the most is folks are using groups for sometimes their special accommodated students that they need to have a separate room for. They're able to group those students and assign the respective proctors and sessions for those students, as well as some schools are actually doing this for each individual classroom they're going to be at. So from a proctor standpoint, they can go through and start the test, look at the sessions underneath that respective group, and they can manage those tests individually with a particular class. So again, it's optional, but it is highly recommended, and it's been very user-friendly. Step 6 is an important one, and this is really the foundation of this particular training, and this is the technology setup and configuration. So we want to make sure that everyone is aware of the technology readiness, that they have gone through, many of the folks have gone through and done the technology readiness survey. You've had the opportunity to utilize the infrastructure trial support pages, as well as looked at all the required documentation and started setting up your system. Make sure that you set up the proctor caching servers. Make sure that you've gone through and validated that your workstations that students are going to be taking tests on are up to par and everything's going to be working just fine. So that timeline is from February 1st to March 16th. So we're right in the middle of that. So we want to make sure that folks are doing it. And the rest of this training session will outline what steps you should be taking. Step 7 is a test session setup. So this is really the heart of taking the test and putting the students into particular testing sessions and being able to manage those. So we want to align those students that are in your particular classrooms and make sure they're associated to a test session. And this is imperative to walk through this from February 1st to April 1st. We also, step 8, we have, and I had these highlighted in red, not only the technology setup, but the pre-caching content. So from a technology coordinator perspective, we want to make sure that the folks are able to download the test content for the spring admin, and the timelines for doing that are March 16th to April 8th. Now, the data is available now. You actually can go through and download the test content. We do recommend that 2 weeks prior that you go through and just validate that you have the latest and greatest test content on your system and everything is ready to go. So that's why that window is a little bit later than right now, but you are able to go through and do that now. Step 9 is you're getting ready to prepare for testing. If you have all your students into the test sessions and you're setting up your rooms, you would go in and create the authorization tickets. And the authorization tickets are used, typically they're given to the room supervisors. That as the students come in and sit down at the test, you give them the authorization ticket. The student will have, it'll have the student's first name, middle initial, last name, and their student ID, as well as a user ID and password that they'll use to log into the test session for ACT Aspire. So typically those are done the week prior to you actually preparing to test. Step 10 and 11 are obviously during the testing window. So if you're not aware, the testing window for the Wyoming specific ACT Aspire is from April 11th through May 3rd. And then step 11 is actually administering the test, again, through April 11th through May 3rd. And then the last section is after you're completed with testing, you want to make sure that the authorization tickets and any scratch paper are collected, and make sure the students don't take those home. And then at the end, you want to make sure that after the students have completed taking the test, that they close those test sessions down. So the scores are all sent over, and you can get ready for reporting. And that post-test cleanup is from April 12th through May 10th. And again, this spreadsheet will be available for, or this one-page document can be available on the ACT Aspire landing page. Okay, now we're going to talk a little bit about the background of the ACT Aspire system. So the system, one thing that we wanted to mention is that in 2015, 4.5 million tests were given online with the ACT Aspire system. So this is a proven system that's production ready and not in any type of pilot phase. The ACT Aspire is a proven and stable system that is built with scalability in mind to ensure the highest level of performance to support your online computer-based testing needs. The computer-based assessment is comprised of 4 main technology components working together smoothly and securely to deliver test content to students and preserve the fidelity of the student responses. Those components are the ACT Aspire Administrative Portal, TestNav 8, System Check, and Proctor Cache. The Administrative Portal is a system that administrators will use to manage student data, set up and schedule computer-based testing, and manage all the test sessions. The portal is role-based, and users can be prescribed specific roles that will control what functions they have access to and what they can do within the portal. TestNav 8 is the next generation secure testing engine that students will use to interact with test items. Behind the scenes, an inner component of the TestNav called Early Warning System maintains the test security and checks for connectivity during content issues. The Early Warning System also maintains student responses. So while a student is testing, the Early Warning System will record student responses in a local encrypted saved response file. After a few questions are answered, the TestNav will bundle the answers into a packet and transmit them up to the ACT Aspire servers. TestNav will then wait for a handshake acknowledgement and verify that we have all the successfully captured responses. This means that we manage and verify the transmission of student responses to the ACT Aspire servers. And this also gives the added benefit of the students being able to resume where they left off in case there's a connectivity or network failure. It is also important to note that when students submit their final answers, TestNav will not completely finalize the student's test until it has received the confirmation that responses had been captured and onto the ACT Aspire servers. We want to be absolutely sure that we have all the student answers before we wrap up the test. System Check is a tool that is used to determine system readiness. No installation is necessary. Users simply visit the website with a testing workstation. There they can perform quick tests to verify that the workstation meets the minimum browser, operating system, and Java or application requirements to run TestNav 8. Users can also perform a connectivity test that allows them to see if the student workstation can retrieve sample test content successfully. System Check also helps determine how many students can test in the same time, which will help technology coordinators utilize the correct number of testing workstations. Proctor Cache is the software that works with TestNav to reduce the overall bandwidth requirement for the computer-based testing. By downloading the entire test content with your student's need and storing it locally in an encrypted format, allowing you to serve the test content at local speeds versus internet download speeds. The requirements for Project Cache are very flexible. This does not have to be installed on a server-based operating system or a very robust computer. In most cases, it can be installed on a Project Cache machine, can be installed on an old workstation, and as long as it has connectivity to all the different desktops that are going to be taken within the classroom. So 4 main components: the ACT Aspire portal, TestNav 8, where the students actually take the test, and then 2 utilities that we want to make sure we review is a system check for TestNav to make sure that the desktops are working properly and connecting to the Project Caching server, as well as ProctorCache, which works with TestNav to reduce the bandwidth. And we'll review that a little bit further down the road here. The next screen we want to review is the ACT Aspire landing page. And if you don't take anything out of this particular training session, I really want to make sure that you write down this particular URL, and it's up at the top of the screen. It's actaspire.pearson.com. And underneath the Technology tab, there's additional information for System Check, ProctorCache, and TestNav can be found on this landing page, as well as other resources. So we have technology readiness manuals, we have news and bulletins, and this is really a one-stop shop for all of your technology needs for ACT Aspire. We mentioned there the technology readiness manual. This guide explains computer-based testing requirements, the main components of the computer-based testing, and primary setup steps to perform. We also have a Chromebook quick guide located in the Technology Readiness Manual. This quick guide provides FAQs for Chromebooks. The FAQ can also be found on our Advocate site under C for Chromebooks. We have a TestNav 8 error codes, which is handy for all the TestNav 8 error codes along with the troubleshooting and resolution steps. So this is used, typically you don't see any error codes within TestNav 8, but if during a test session you lose connectivity either to the ACT Aspire servers or to your local Project Caching server, it'll warn the student and give them a specific error code. That error code will actually let the proctor know what is going on and how to quickly resolve that. The last Project Caching guide that we wanted to review, the last document in our suite of technical resources, is the Project Caching user guides. While this is a section for technical readiness manual, it also can be found separately on the Advocate site for a quick reference. It provides steps for installing and configuring Project Cache software. When looking for system requirements, you want to pay attention to 3 specific components: the ACT Aspire portal, TestNav 8, and ProctorCache. You always want to be able to find the links of the technology requirements on the Advocate page, as well as the ACT Aspire landing page. If you do go into the Advocate page, you can go through and click on the A for the ACT Aspire Portal Users Guides, T for TestNav, and that's specifically for the hardware and software requirements, and you can go down to the P for Project Caching User Guides. Now let's talk a little bit about setup and what's going on with the details. So TestNav can be installed on desktops and laptops using the TestNav Desktop app, or on the iPads and Chromebooks, they have their specific apps as well. The TestNav Desktop apps must be used by districts that typically use Chrome and Firefox browsers. They can also be used by those who prefer an installable solution over the browser-based testing. TestNav is also browser-based, so if you may be accustomed to going through and opening up a browser right now and logging into TestNav and not downloading the installable app, we support that as well. So TestNav has this for both Windows and Mac workstations. And this means that there's no individual system configuration required beyond confirming that the system requirements and running system check on the images are valid and that they will launch TestNav. One thing to note here is that the Chrome browser is no longer supports the Java plugin. So if you do use Chrome within your districts, we highly recommend using the installable desktop application instead of using your Chrome browser. The other portion is Firefox will be no longer supporting Chrome, or won't be supporting Java after June of 2016. So about 80% of the folks that are taking tests online now are using these downloadable apps. They seem to work very, very smoothly from on the day of testing, and they don't have any updates for Java, which is very nice because it seems that there's a lot of Java updates with specific browsers, and we don't want to interfere with not having the right version when it comes to the day of testing. I also want to highlight that regardless of what installable method that you use, you do need to make sure that these URLs and ports are whitelisted on your network. So this is important because TestNav uses them, as well as the content that goes back and forth will be shared throughout these URLs. So it's tn.actaspire.org port 80, and then the .com, as well as the tn.actaspire.org port 443, as well as the pearsonTestContent.com. So make sure that from a network firewall perspective that those 4 network configurations are whitelisted. Now let's talk into the setup details. Chromebooks. So Chromebooks can either be managed or unmanaged, which presents us with 2 different setup methods. For managed devices, all the setup steps will be performed through the central administration. So all Chromebooks in a domain can be configured all at once. When using managed devices, there are 2 main steps that will need to be completed. Install the TestNav 8 Chromebook app, set it up to run as a kiosk app or in kiosk mode, and preserve the local data on the Chromebook to retain the saved response file, or what's often referred to the SRF file, and log files onto the device. The other option for unmanaged devices is to set up be performed on each individual device. This requires access to the administrator account for the device, and you don't have access. So if you don't have access to the administrator account, the Chromebook will need to be backed up to the cloud storage and wipe clean before you can continue. After testing, it can be restored from the cloud. So you have 2 separate options: managed Chromebooks and unmanaged Chromebooks. Now let's talk a little bit about iPads. Excuse me. Administrators can use Apple Configurator to manage multiple devices at once. Using this method, you'll be able to have a supervised mode on the iPad and then lock the iPad to adjust the TestNav 8 application for testing. Another option is the Profile Manager. This is Apple's specific mobile device management tool or utility solutions for Mac OS X. You can select the TestNav app from the lock to Apple menu and push the profile specifically to the supervised devices. A third option is to put them into guided access mode. So individual iPad devices can be configured using guided access mode. This set of steps will be done to each and individual iPad to secure the device and lock it to the TestNav 8 app. That particular step is my personal favorite. It's very nice to be able to hit the home button 3 times, log in. Once you've logged into TestNav, that secures the entire device to just the TestNav app. after you're done testing, you hit the button 3 more times, the administrator would have to come in and type in their 4 to 6-digit code, depending on what iPad device you have. And then you click on end, and it allows the device to be used just as freely as it was before. The fourth setup for the iPads is the autonomous single app mode. This allows the single app mode to be turned on dynamically when the TestNav 8 application is launched. So this method requires both a mobile device manager, or the MDM, and an iPad that is in supervised mode. So various options depending on what mode that you're configuring your iPad for. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the desktop apps. So if your school is downloading the TestNav 8 apps and are accessible on the ACT Aspire landing page, you'll want to click on the Technology Setup tab. And from there, as I mentioned before, you're able to download the desktop app, which is going to be used for your Windows or Macintosh type machines. You can use the iPad app, which is in the middle, as well as the Chromebook app, which is in the far right. If you're using the Windows or the desktop download, it does have many different options for installations. From a Mac, you have a DMG file that you can share and install. For Windows, there's 2 different selections. So if you're using it from a managed mode and you want to be able to execute the desktop app to all of your devices, you can use the MSI. And then we also offer Linux and Fedora and Ubuntu in both 32 and 64-bit options. Students will use the login credentials found on the student authorization ticket to log into TestNav. Student authorization tickets are printed from the ACT Aspire portal. And please note that, again, these tickets are secure material and will be collected at the end of each test session. More information about the student authorization tickets will be covered during the portal section of today's training. Now we're going to talk a little bit about System Check. So System Check was developed to help customers prepare for online testing requirements in 2 significant areas: student workstations and internet bandwidth. This allows customers to make any necessary updates prior to the testing window. System Check validates testing workstations meet the minimum system requirements needed to run TestNav 8 by checking the browser, Java version, and operating system. On a mobile device, System Check will only verify that the operating system meets the minimum system requirements. This helps you identify computers that may need updates in order to be fully ready for computer-based testing. Additionally, it helps customers plan for online testing with bandwidth speed checks. To gather realistic results, speed checks should be run from a student testing workstation on the same day and week and time of your anticipated performing online testing window. So what this means is that if you're going through and you're running your system check, you want to do that. If you're going to be testing at 9 a.m. On a Tuesday, make sure that you're running system check at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday to validate the real life scenario. If many people will either do it early in the morning, like when the tech coordinators come in, and it runs very, very smoothly, and then or they do it at night when there's no load on the system, and it's not a very reliable test. So you want to make sure you're using system check to validate your network and throughput at the anticipated time that testing is going to occur to make sure that you have realistic results. So again, this is system check. To check the student's workstation, there's a system check from a browser on the workstation that you want to check. You want to click on your Check Your System tab and select the Start button. to test the workstation meets the minimum browser, Java, and operating system requirements. On a tablet, again, on a Chromebook, the system check will only verify the operating system meets the minimum system requirements. The same thing on an iPad. If you run this check through Safari and you hit the start, it'll only validate that you have the proper iOS installed and to use the TestNav 8 application as well as the installable application. If all the checks pass, you'll see a green check mark next to the message, all checks passed. You also see check marks next to each item of the test has been assessed. If all the items did not pass, you will see a red X next to the line that do not pass, and the results column will list what was detected on the workstation and what the minimum requirement is to make sure that you're compliant. This will enable you to reveal any gaps that you have in individual system readiness and address them before the anticipation of a live operational test. So again, this is a utility that you can make sure that everything is working ahead of time, that you're not waiting for the week of testing, and to make sure that all of your sessions all your workstations are compliant. The other thing I wanted to highlight here is underneath the checks performed here, you'll see the verification section. And by following the steps, you can launch a sample test in TestNav and verify that it will run on the student workstation. You'll not be able to complete this step on a mobile device since it requires Java to complete, but the readiness on a mobile device will be confirmed your system requirements and install the TestNav app as covered earlier. So what this means is if you're using the browser, you can go through and go to tn.actaspire.org and open up the ACT TestNav browser or the TestNav application. Otherwise, you can go through, if you're using on an iPad, you can open up that specific app and you can put that in the secure mode. And when you log in, you can type in username, and then in the password section, you can type in password. And what this will do is allow you to confirm that the connection from your local workstation is set up properly. You're not going to have any errors or issues, and that you're able to confirm proper connection up to the ACT Aspire portal servers so that it's able to release content back and forth and validate that connection. At the very end, you'll see a little congratulations, your computer is correctly configured and it's available to run TestNav. So that's a quick check to do to make sure that each of your workstation is configured properly and able to move forward ahead of testing. Now we're all going to talk about the testing capacity tab. So this is going to be used to allow you to perform a real-time speed check between the workstations and the ACT Aspire servers. This provides an assessment of the data transfer speeds and will return an estimate of the number of simultaneous users that could be supported by at the time the test was done. Keep in mind that this result is an estimate and it may not be representative of the actual transfer speeds during student testing, especially if network conditions are different. So again, when we are talking about perform these tests at the same time that you're going to be doing them, you think you're going to be doing testing, make sure that you're running them at the same exact time. This will most simulate what the download and testing capacity is. By default, this test is going to check the connection between the student workstations that you are running this test on and the ACT Aspire servers. We can see that there's a direct to ACT Aspire connection as well as a caching computer option. And what's nice here is that when I've met with tech coordinators in the past, a lot of folks will say, well, we have a T1 line that comes into the school and we really don't need it. We don't feel that we need proctor caching. And then we'll run this test and we'll insert their proctor caching server and we'll compare the results from download speed as well as the testing capacity. And they'll see the differences, that it's really useful to be able to use the proctor caching server. The other option is that you can put many Proctor caching servers on here. So if you're trying to figure out, should I put one Proctor caching at the district level, or should I put it at the individual school level, or in an individual building that students are going to be testing at, you can put multiple Proctor caching setup servers on here and connect to them via the IP address, and you can see on this one screen which is the best alternative for your students and where you're connecting from that local location. So this is a great utility that your technology coordinator should be using. Proctor Cache software is used in conjunction with the test nav to reduce bandwidth requirements and accelerate the delivery of test content. So what can you do with Proctor Cache? You can pre-cache content before the test to your local network. You can reduce or eliminate redundant downloads of test content, which will reduce the burden on your internet service provider or your ISP. And you can store an encrypted local copy of all pre-cached test content and serve them at LAN speeds to the students. While Proctor caching is not required, it is highly recommended due to the many benefits it provides. So again, it's not just about how it's communicating, and it's not all about the connection into your local connection. There's a lot of downstream effects that'll help improve your efficiencies and improve the student experience as well. The Proctor Cache software must be installed in a minimum set of requirements. The requirements are not robust, which gives districts flexibility on which machines they use for Proctor caching. It does not require any underlying server-based operating systems and can run on any desktop class software and operating system. So this is good to note. It doesn't take a full server, either a Windows server to be able to run Proctor Cache. You really don't have to have that large a machine. You just have to make sure that all your workstations have a good stream that connect to that local server. Proctor Cache can run both on Windows and Mac OS X operating systems, and we have that listed here as the minimum requirements. And as I mentioned earlier too, Proctor Cache uses the TC ports 80 and 443 for communication between the Proctor caching machines and the ACT Aspire server. So we want to make sure that those are whitelisted, and we had those updated earlier. Because testing workstations must know a predictable network location for the Proctor caching machines, Proctor Cache requires a fixed internal IP address. Those districts which require internet traffic to pass through an upstream proxy server will have to configure Proctor caching to point to the Proctor proxy server. For details on setting this up for upstream proxy, refer to the upstream proxy configuration that's found in the Proctor caching user guide. Again, that's on Avocet underneath P. It'll have that Proctor caching user guide. After Proctor Cache is installed, System Check can be used to test the connectivity and throughput between the student workstations and the Proctor caching machine. I'll show you just a quick diagram of the differences here. So to illustrate the two network scenarios, the scenario on the left illustrates a network system and setup that does not use Proctor Cache. Each student is downloading a unique copy of the test content directly from the ACT Aspire servers. The diagram shows the redundant test copies are being downloaded simultaneously over the district's ISP connection while students are waiting the test. This heavy use of bandwidth not only affects how quickly the test loads for the students, but also the available bandwidth for all the internet-related activities. The right side of the diagram shows the network traffic for a test environment successfully using Proctor Cache. The test content is pre-cached once in an encrypted format on a local workstation designated in the test nav configuration setup as the Proctor caching computer. Students that are assigned to the Proctor caching computer will locally access the content without utilizing your internet bandwidth, thus decreasing overall network traffic for your district. The closer the configured computers are to the project caching workstation, the faster the delivery of the test content. So again, use system check to be able to validate what speeds you can have to your, not only to the ACT Aspire servers, but also to the various project caching locations. Districts have the flexibility to decide where to implement the project caching in the network environment. Based on local network considerations, districts can implement project caching machines at the district or school level. If implementing at the district level, we recommend considering the added complexity of a connection between the school and the central location. If project caching computers are housed at the school where students are testing, then you do not have to worry about any outside connection. Without project caching, so just to review, without project caching, each testing computer must individually connect to the internet to download the content, and they're fighting for resources through your ISP. Without project caching, the test content is mirrored on a local computer from the testing computers, and they download it directly from your individual LAN, which is much, much quicker and more secure. Installing and verifying the project cache service is very simple and only takes a few minutes. The technology coordinators will download the project cache installer for their system. There are new, the other thing I wanted to highlight, there are new installers for the spring 2015. So if you haven't installed it in the past 6 months, you want to make sure that you reinstall it because there's a new installation for both the Windows and Mac. Both of these installations are found, again, we have this link for the executable or the zip file, but they're also available on the actaspire.pearson.com ACT Aspire page underneath the technology tab that you can be able to download that respective information. So you'll want to run, after you download it, you want to run the installer. It's a quick install anywhere wizard that'll prompt you through the minimum installation steps. After the installation is complete, you want to start the service. This is normally started by default, but there are shortcuts available to start and stop the service as needed. The nice thing about having it installed as a service is that if for any reason the computer reboots, it automatically restarts and it runs as a service. So it's really one of those utilities that on the project caching server, you set it and forget it. It's one of those things that will continue to run. You can verify the status of the cache content by using the project cache diagnostics page. Depending on your installation preferences, you can access the diagnostic screen from your start menu on the Windows machines finder on the Windows machines, or the finder on the Mac, or through the desktop shortcuts that it creates. You can also directly navigate to the project cache diagnostics page by typing in http:// whatever the IP address is of that particular machine, :4480 in your browser, and hit enter, and it'll bring up the same exact screen as well. So when the page comes up, you'll see 3 separate tabs. You'll select the test tab for information about test content. So this will have all of your respective content for, your English, reading, math, science, and writing. All that test content will download onto this particular screen. At first, it'll have red next to them, and as it's downloading, they'll have like the selections will turn to green. So it'll actually show you that you successfully downloaded the content. Next, you'll have the Clients tab, which will allow you to monitor the client activity. The client activity is nice so that from a test coordinator's perspective, they can log in onto that project caching server and see all the various IP addresses that are connecting to that particular project cache server. So if you have a room, say you have 2 rooms of 30 computers in your school system, and as the students are actually logging in and taking the test, it'll actually connect to this one individual project cache server. You'll be able to see IP address as those connections happen. If there are any failures or it drops, it'll actually show you that information as well. So that's a nice way from a tech perspective to be able to monitor that all of these servers or all the individual workstations have access and are successfully connecting to your project caching server. And then last, we have settings tabs that allows you to customize a password to log into this information, as well as refresh and reload and purge individual content. So there's a settings section here as well. All right, so now let's talk about managing the project cache on the ACT Aspire portal. So this is important. So as we're going through this, you want to make sure that, again, if you're the administrator or the test coordinator, make sure that your technology coordinator has access into the ACT Aspire portal. They'll be able to designate which content and make sure that that they need to download to the project caching server, as well as set up the IP address that we'll walk through here of the individual project caching server. So they need access into the portal. So from managing project cache in the portal, there's no need to configure individual student workstations to point them to the project caching machine where they will gather content. You can direct TestNav to the project cache machine by defining the default project cache setting in the ACT Aspire portal and applying that to a default for all the test sessions that have been created. Alternatively, you can define a project cache machine when you are creating test sessions. When students log into the assessment, TestNav will detect the project cache settings that have been applied to the test sessions and know from where to fetch the cache content. By adding the project cache settings to the portal, you will essentially be directing TestNav to pre-cache content. If no pre-cache content is available, TestNav will gather content directly from the ACT Aspire servers. So again, just to review this, on each of the individual machines, you don't need to log into that one and actually make it point to the project cache server. That's all done through the portal. So when the students sit down and get the authorization ticket to go and take the test, that username and password is assigned to a session that it automatically knows that when you're pulling that test content, it's going to look for the IP address of the project caching server. So that information is then gathered and pulled directly from the server. So there's no need to set up anything at the local workstation, which is very nice. Now let's walk through creating the project cache settings in the organization section on the ACT Aspire portal. So this is when you log in to the ACT Aspire portal, you'll go into organizations. Under there'll be project cache settings, which is what the screen is showing you here. From here, you'll click on the primary host IP address, which is your default for where your project caching server is located. And then you'll also put in a port number, which should be 4480. 4480 is typically used as the default port for project caching. So again, it's pretty easy to do. You click on organizations, go down to project cache settings. You click on the primary host IP address entry field. You put in the IP address of the project caching server, type in 4480, and click save. And that will save content so that as you go in and start creating test sessions from a test administrator standpoint, that project caching server information will be linked to all the new test sessions that you're creating. So that's a wonderful setup to be able to complete. Once project caching settings are created, test content can be pre-cached by user with administrator rights. So to pre-cache the test, first make sure that you're at the organization level where the project cache settings were created. So this would be at the district or school level. Then hover your mouse over the organizations tab to access the organizations drop-down menu and select pre-cache test from the options, and the manage pre-cache test screen will appear. So this is the screen that you'll see above here. We'll check the box beside each of the tests that you'd like to pre-cache, and then click on the pre-cache button to initiate the caching process. So what that'll do is you're selecting the 5 tests that you'll want to download the content for. It's already linked to the IP address of the Proctor caching server. You'll click on the pre-cache content, and the nice thing is it'll automatically start downloading all the content. The other thing you'll be able to do is click on the system check button there, and it'll open up the Proctor caching settings there, and you can see, if I remember correctly, before it had a test content on the first tab of the system check, and you'll be able to see where that information is downloading. So you'll be able to see it for English, reading, writing, math, and science. All that test content will be downloaded. Typically, if you're worried about timing, typically to download all that content, it takes about 15 to 20 minutes. So it's not something that's going to take you days and days and days to download. It's about a 15, 20-minute process. And if you need to purge the data and reload it, as we mentioned before, so you can actually download all the content now. And if you wanted to purge and reload it at a later point in time, you can also do that as we get closer to testing. Again, all these instructions are found in the Proctor Cache user guide, and that's on our Avocet site, listed under P for Proctor Cache. Last, I wanted to talk a little bit about the infrastructure trial. So let's talk a little bit about that. And I know previously, back in October, after we went through this training, we had an infrastructure trial training, and I wanted just to highlight that really quick before we wrap things up here. So the infrastructure trial is created to be like a dry run or a dress rehearsal for the computer-based assessment. ACT Aspire highly recommends participating in an infrastructure trial to prepare for computer-based testing. Unlike a live assessment, you'll not use any student information, so all that information is set up for you. And it's a low-stakes test, so obviously it's old content that's be used. But the nice thing is you'll be able to confirm that, for one, your TestNav machines are configured correctly, that the devices can successfully run TestNav, that your network will bear the load. So if you have it all set up to your Proctor caching server, you can see if there's any kinks there and rectify those before you actually do the live testing. And then last, you can go through and make sure that your staff is well prepared and they know what to do, how to administer the computer-based test. So it's on 3 different levels, really, that's really important. Again, to highlight that from a technology standpoint, you're testing to make sure that the desktop computer is linked to the Proctor caching server or directly to the ACT Aspire servers. 2, it's really nice for your staff to be able to know what to do and expect on the day of testing. And 3, it's really nice for the students. So if students want to go through here and you can print off fictitious authorization tickets for them, they know exactly what they're going to do as they come into testing in that live week in April. They can go through and know what they're going to be able to log in as, make sure that they can go to and take a test, navigate through TestNav and see what tools they're able to use. And then it doesn't take very long. It's only, many of those tests are less than 5 items long. So it's nice to be able to go and participate that. So I know in past folks, even though that they have conducted this in past years, the infrastructure trial is a different tenant within ACT Aspire. It's all within the same production system. It's just in a little bit different section within the portal that's not within Wyoming. Again, this is fictitious data that we've set up to make sure that you can have kind of a dry run or a dress rehearsal to make sure that you feel confident that when we come into testing the day of, that you run through all the kinks, not only from a technology standpoint, but from a room supervisor standpoint. They know what to expect, as well as the student. The student knows what to expect when they come on the day of testing. So now we're going to move to the questions section of this tab. And what I'm going to do here is unmute folks and let you ask some questions. We have about 4 minutes here that we can answer questions. So if you do have questions, feel free to unmute your, you can go up to your name underneath participants and say unmute and ask any questions.
When will the district codes be available?
Excuse me?
The district codes, the 4-digit codes for the districts, when will they be released?
The codes for districts?
Yeah.
You mean the tests themselves, or which code specifically?
The codes in order to set up, for example, the 4-digit code that identifies the district in the proctor cache.
Sorry, sir, I barely can hear you.
The 4-digit code used in the proctor cache to identify the district. As far as we know, we don't have access to that yet.
So those are available now. Proctor cache, you can go through and create that right now. If you wanted to go through and if you're referring to the infrastructure trial portion, you can go through and set up your proctor caching server within that infrastructure trial tenant and test that. Otherwise, you can actually set up your proctor caching server right now. The students are actually already uploaded into the system, and you can verify the connection of those proctor caching servers into the system today, actually.
But we don't need an organization code to identify ourselves inside the system?
So if you don't have access into the system, you would talk to, you can either touch base with us, or we can get in touch with your administrator for your respective district to make sure they give you proper access. Once you have access into the system, then you'll be able to move forward with your setup. But typically, again, we want to make sure that the administrators of the system and each of the districts are setting up those users. So we would actually contact that particular person that's identified in your district and make sure that they either know how to set you up, or we can assist in doing that as well.
Okay, well, I did, but they said they hadn't seen any information on the identifier for the organization for our school district. So
yeah, so all the organizations should be loaded now. So if there isn't, or if there's one that's missing, please let us know and contact us. And you can contact us at ACT_Aspire_implementation at actaspire.org. The email that, or you can give us a call, and we'll be more than happy to help you to make sure that your organization's listed, as well as your proper access.
okay, thank you.
Yep, no problem. Any other questions?
This is Scott Hansen. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, Scott, we can hear you great.
If I caught this correctly, this TestNav 1.4.1 MSI for Windows environment, that's a standalone browser that I just actually installed it on a device here. And there are no Java requirements. It's an all-in-one encompassed package, and hence there's no test for it to see if it's going to meet standards. Is that correct?
So what it is, so that's the actual desktop client. And the nice thing about that is, you're right, it doesn't require any specific Java updates for that. You can go through a system check and it'll verify that your operating system is correct to be able to run the utility. But other than that, there's no other requirements. So you download it, you send it to your servers through the MSI, and then each of the individual desktops should be able to implement it.
I'm the building tech for one of the schools here. I'm actually not in charge of any of the proctor setup or the proxy setups or whatever. But if I have TestNav installed right now on this unit, which I do right in front of me, and I open it up, it actually brings me to a sign-in username password window, much like what I would see if I went to the ACTAspirepearson.com with the TN in front. Okay,
Correct.
so they look similar to me, but I don't see a place in here where I can test anything other than it says test audio as the only option I see. Do I have a demo username and password I can punch in to get to a test page, or?
Yep. You can actually type in username in the username section and password into the password, all lowercase, and hit enter, and that'll actually log you in to verify that it's set up properly and you're making a connection to the ACT Aspire servers and back.
Okay, I'm doing that right now.
It doesn't validate that you're, excuse me?
I just said I'm doing that right now. Username, lowercase, and password. Oh, there it is, sure enough.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And, okay, it says guest. It says start test now. So this is actually...
It's just a practice one at all.
If I see content, we're in good condition then.
Correct.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Yep. So again, my name is Sean Palmer. We'll be available to answer any other questions. We'll be posting this recorded session online, and we wanted to highlight as well that we have various methods for support through the customer service line, which is 888-802-7502. That's Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 8:30 p.m. Mountain Time. And as well as the email, which is actaspire_implementation@actaspire.org. And then if you're dialing in, another nice option is that you can hit Section 8, and those will target you to a specific Wyoming call center representative. So they know all the policies around Wyoming, and they'll help you answer as many questions as possible through a specific training effort. Okay, so we're going to conclude the session, and again, we'll send a communication around where this recorded session is available so that you can go through and review this, as well as share with other colleagues that weren't available. So I appreciate everyone's time today, and this will conclude the training. Have a wonderful day.